Hello, my name is Ashley Seitz, and this is my interview presentation for course 674. My interviewee is a white male. He's 40 years old and he's a Jewish American. He is a descendant of Poland. 3 of his grandparents grew up in Poland and were part of the concentration camps during the Holocaust. He is middle class and heterosexual. He's married to a Jewish woman. He has earned a bachelor's degree and works as a copywriter. He has mentioned that he, as well as many of his family members, experience anxiety, and he has a very close-knit family. His parents are married, and he has 2 brothers. This is his sort of religious beliefs from youth through adolescence. He attended Hebrew school until the age of 13. This was a very comprehensive religious education. He became fluent in Hebrew and did a lot of studying of prayer and the religious texts. He maintained a kosher diet as a child, which did include separate plates, separate silverware in the household, to keep his meat and dairy separate. He also feels that as a child, Judaism sort of encompassed his entire life, and it played into his daily life, from his diet to where he was at school, who he spent time with. He and his family identify as a conservative Jewish family. This would be sort of the middle road between a Reform and an Orthodox Jew, and they are bonded by the Torah rituals. However, conservative Jewish families are able to be more free to interpret the Jewish law. Moving on, he believed, and his family believed in the first tenet and the second tenet of Judaism, which is that there is one God who created the universe, and they believed that Jews were chosen by God to be a model for human race. So it was very important in his family to do acts of kindness and regularly be a kind and good person. As he got a little older, he identified his religion more as spirituality. He began to talk more about sort of that difference. He says he really believes in traditions now as an adult, as a way of remembering and respecting his religion and the generations before him. He no longer keeps kosher, except for around relatives, to be respectful towards them. He sort of felt like as he entered college, he stepped away and began to sort of interpret what he had learned, and he sort of evolved and changed his beliefs. He still does believe in a higher power or source, which he says is not necessarily a higher being or higher power entity, and he's not even sure really he truly believes in God any longer. So he's really taken on many of these traditions and continues to practice them. However, he does not necessarily believe in all of the laws and rules of Judaism. He has become very interested in locating stories about the past from his grandparents who were in the camps during the Holocaust. As I mentioned before, they grew up in Poland. And did experience, 3 of the grandparents did experience the camps. And he's also been really interested in learning more about how his history and the persecution of Jewish people has impacted the way he is today. As I mentioned before, in young adulthood and into now, Judaism, this is a quote from him, "Judaism for me has become more about traditions than the actual beliefs. We have a long, long history of traditions in my family and the generations before. Moments that you spend with your family and bond with your family are what are important to him." He has really held on to those values and connected with them out of respect and out of interest. He still celebrates the Shabbat and Passover and a few of the other high holidays. He does that with family. Again, less of the religious value of them and more of, as he says, feasting with a little bit of religion mixed in and a lot of bonding with family. He does still do some of the customary customary atonement ritual, which is each year you throw in bread or pebbles into moving water to get rid of your sins, or as a way to lift them from your shoulders. And something that's interesting about him as he's grown is he stopped using the traditional prayer because it no longer made sense to him. And instead, he found a prayer which is actually in the Velveteen Rabbit, and he uses that because the words make more sense to him now. All of this transition and movement in his journey has really made me think a lot about Alport's model and how it can be applied to understand this growth and change in his religious and spiritual beliefs. So Alport says in stage one that children grow up and they believe everything their parents tell them. They believe in authority figures. He quoted that God is in the sky. He controls everything happening below. We have to be subservient to him and follow the rules in order to make our way into heaven. So in his youth, he sort of had that framework in his mind that he was always working towards getting into heaven. As he moved into a teenager, he didn't rebel a lot, but he states that he did start to sort of question and wonder about his faith, and then he would go back in and he would be full on board with it. So he was just sort of going through this process, just like Alport talks about, where there's a lot of change and growth. And the final stage, stage 3, religious maturity, is where he is now. He has sort of been able to connect with some of the religious and spiritual traditions, in his case mostly the traditions, and approach them critically. So as with the prayer, he decided that prayer no longer worked for him, so he changed it to another prayer. He still performs some of the traditions, but he's made changes that make more sense to him and are more meaningful and useful to him. And he's rejected ideas that are no longer important to him. For instance, he does not necessarily eat kosher anymore. And so this theory really explains sort of what is happening and what his growth is. He now believes that he's stepped away and he's interpreting and evolving his own beliefs in his own way, and he believes, there's something in the universe that's changing things. It may not be God, it may not be any entity. And so that's really changed for him as he's grown, just as Alport's theory lays out. Another concern or issue for him, and during the interview he really hesitated to talk about this with me, and then decided he was going to try to explain his thoughts and feelings. His concept of living as a person with multi-generations before him of persecution for their religion in his history has been a source of conflict for him. He doesn't know how he's been struggling with finding meaning in that. And here's a quote he said to me as he tried to sort of work through these feelings. My thoughts are especially confusing with everything that is going on with Black Lives Matter and social inequity. It's very, very confusing being a Jewish person whose grandparents grew up being prosecuted and a religion that has been prosecuted for thousands of years. It's just confusing. I understand I have persecution in my family, but I also recognize my white privilege. Persecution paired with white privilege, especially now, has been on my mind, and I just don't know how to balance these thoughts. So he's trying to find meaning in what has happened to his religion and his people over many, many, many thousands of years, but while still understanding that he has had certain privileges that other people haven't had as a middle-class Caucasian male. This thought process that he was going through really tied in to me with logotherapy and what Frankl brought up. The meaning of life in his book states that every person has their own specific mission. Actually, let's start with the definition. So logotherapy is based on the premise that human beings are motivated by a will to meaning and an inner pull to discover meaning in life. This rang true to me when hearing him discuss this confusion. He's trying to pull meaning from this. And the meaning of life in the book that Frankl wrote, Man's Search for Meaning, is that every person has their own specific mission in life that they want to carry out, and each challenge in their life therefore gives them the opportunity to find meaning and solve it. At this moment, the interview, I think that this client or this interviewee needs to find meaning and clarity in these feelings he has. This moves on to the essence of existence that is laid out in Frankl's book. The therapist's role at this point would be to widen and broaden the client's visual field so that he can find potential meaning behind this challenge. And the client needs to decide for himself, and as part of finding clarity, if he is doing and wondering about these issues with prosecution for himself and for his own conscience, or if he feels he's responsible to society to find these answers and to better understand these feelings. Implication for social work practice, and this is sort of from the client that I interview's point of view. After discussing all of these topic areas and asking him questions, at the very end of our interview, I asked him how he felt about being asked directly and how he would feel in a therapeutic setting about his spirituality and his religion. And he said right off that he would be much more comfortable speaking about spirituality than he would his religion. He felt that his religion is something he could discuss as he got to know the therapist more, but it just wasn't something that he wanted connected directly with who he was as a person. He also said that he would really prefer a clinician to be respectful of boundaries and rather than assuming that he or she is comfortable with that topic, ask them if they're comfortable, ask them if that's something they're interested in talking about. A last thing that I wanted to mention, and something I'll discuss a little later on, is when he comes across an issue in life, rather than wanting to talk about it initially, he is much more interested to read and learn. For instance, when I asked him what his plans were with trying to deal with this conflict he had about the persecution of his family and the generations before him, the first thing he said he would do is to learn more about it. He would read every book he could to find out and to become more educated. And as we read and I believe frame, that's part of the learning that kids get in Hebrew school. They learn to, rather than speak emotionally, they learn to research and become more intellectual on the subject. That is just part of the tradition. And so this may come from him growing up and going to this Hebrew school, this sort of need to know more before being able to discuss it or express it. Implications for social work practice. So I broke this into two areas. Working with any group, especially at a spiritual or religious level, I sort of took from all of the coursework I've had at Widener so far, and I tried to understand what a social worker needs in order to be a good and competent social worker. And I think it's very important to reflect on your own feelings and be very clear about your opinions, your beliefs, your moral commitments, because that's how you will approach practice. And it's important to be able to respect others' values and differences and understand that your approach may be different with each person. Part of doing that, I think it's important to always do self-reflection, to journal, even doing process recordings to see what it is you're saying and try to understand if what you're saying may be difficult for someone to hear. So I think just as a social worker, always remembering to be aware of yourself and how it affects the client. And then like I was talking about the slide before, working with the Jewish community, they are taught to study as a way of understanding their feelings, bringing feelings into an intellectual form to gain an understanding and find meaning. So if the client is not forthcoming immediately, it may be because they're still reflecting, still learning, still teaching themselves. And for the client, I found some really interesting methods for treating them. Psychotherapeutic storytelling and cognitive behavioral theory could be great ways to work with these clients. The psychotherapeutic storytelling helps with cognitive reorganization. And what I mean by that is it helps them to understand the connections between maladaptive behaviors, painful emotions, and life events. It's also a great way to develop rapport between clients and counselors and learn information. They may talk about their spirituality, their traditions, their religion, all in a comfortable setting that doesn't feel pressured and feels led by them. The Jewish culture also greatly values storytelling, as you can see through many of the religious texts. And then logotherapy that we read about from